Well, the ongoing war on Ukraine has several implications. The most significant implication is the unprecedented rise in the global crude oil prices. So the global crude oil prices have been rising like anything. There's almost a 50% increase in the global crude prices post Russian invasion in Ukraine. Not only that, the global steel prices are also rising because Russia and Ukraine account for nearly 10% of the world steel production. The most significant implication is the world may witness a food crisis, especially the countries in Africa and Asia. The poorer nations may see a food crisis owing to the ongoing war on Ukraine. The reason for this is wheat is an important food grain in the world. It is a staple diet for many. So the Russia and Ukraine account for nearly 25% of the global tradable wheat surplus. So what does it mean? So for example, the world has seen a $44 billion trade in wheat. Out of that $44 billion trade in wheat, $8 billion were contributed by Russia and $3 billion trade was contributed by Ukraine. So which mean $11 billion out of the $44 billion global trade on wheat was done by these two nations only. So Russia is the number one exporter of wheat in the world and Ukraine is the number 5, stands at number 5 in global wheat exports. Russia and Ukraine together produce 104 million tons of wheat every year. In fact, India also produces 100 million tons. India's wheat production is roughly similar to the wheat production in Russia and Ukraine together. But the difference is Russia and Ukraine are smaller nations. The two countries together have around, I think, 20 crore population, whereas we have over 130 crore population. Therefore, though India produces wheat almost equal to the wheat produced by Russia and Ukraine together, India doesn't export wheat much. On an average, India exports 1% of its wheat production. In the recent past, the wheat production has increased around today. It was around 2.5 million tons, and now it has increased to 6 million tons. But still, this is only a recent phenomenon. Normally, roughly, India exports only 1% of its production. So, therefore, Russia and Ukraine contribute to the wheat requirements of the world today. The largest importer being the Egypt. Egypt runs world's most significant and world's largest food subsidy program. So, for example, Egypt ensures that the bread prices are at very low because the authoritarian rulers in Egypt do not want people to revolt. So, they keep the food prices low. In fact, when last time when the food prices have increased, this led to Arab Spring. One of the reasons for Arab Spring is the rise in the food prices. Therefore, the authoritarian regimes in Egypt and elsewhere in Africa want to ensure that the food prices are at low. So, for example, Egypt runs a $5.5 billion, that means around $550 crore food subsidy program. So, the world's largest importer is Egypt. So, not just the Egypt, there are several countries which import wheat, like Indonesia, like Turkey, and Oman. There are several nations, Nigeria, and several nations, South Africa, they import wheat. So Russia and Ukraine have been contributing to the wheat requirements of countries like Egypt, Turkey, because the logistics is easier. India is relatively far away, and also India doesn't export much. Now with the wheat sowing season in Ukraine was affected by war. There is a logistics problem. The Ukrainian ports have been closed. So there is a problem of payments. So therefore, the world is not receiving enough wheat. So the wheat prices in futures market has increased by even 50%. So therefore, the world is expected to witness a food crisis. Well, India can certainly intervene in this kind of a situation. When the world was witnessing COVID, India supplied medicines like hydroxychloroquine. You may remember that even President Trump had to not only cajole but even threaten India to provide for hydroxychloroquine. So India has provided hydroxychloroquine to Brazil. India has provided vaccines to over 90 nations. So similarly today India can come to the rescue and it can be a win-win situation. India will benefit, the world will benefit. So India has around 24 million tons of buffer stocks of wheat. So because we have a system of wheat procurement and storing them and keeping them for future requirement, because country of India's magnitude cannot wait for a food crisis to attack it. So therefore India always maintains a sizable buffer stocks or a reserve stocks of wheat. So India today have around 24 million tons of wheat in its godowns. So therefore India can avail this opportunity and intervene in the global market so that the prices of wheat in the global market will subside and India will come to the rescue of several nations in need of food. Well, this may be a diplomatic advantage for India and an economic advantage for India. For that, in fact, India has to do the active diplomacy. But the problem here is this is only a crisis supply. We have to convert this crisis supply into a consistent supplies wherein we continue to retain the export upper hand in future. So once the Russia and Ukraine wheat enters, we may again have to fold up our exports. This shouldn't happen. For this, if this shouldn't happen, India should actually focus on quality standards because the global competition is very high. We have to meet the global competition. Therefore, India has to improve its pest control measures. India has to improve on many aspects so that the quality of wheat it produces will be on par with the international standards. So therefore, India is not only sees an immediate but a long-term opportunity in the food crisis created by the war on Ukraine.